Why have we come to earth? Do you remember? Why have we taken birth? Do you remember?
Except that rain part. We could use a little. Oh, there's a cowbell? I've got one at home. How are you? Good, me too. My talk today is supposed to be on completion because it was supposed to be the talk the day after last night's talent show. You all came to the talent show last night, right? I was there too. Well, I was here actually, but there was no talent show because we didn't get anybody signing up for it really, so we had to cancel that a while back. Maybe next year we'll have a talent show and we'll warm people up to it. And we'll have a bunch of people out of Char Wyndham's water painting class. We'll be happy to show their artwork and stuff like that. So I was asked instead to do the talk that was supposed to be happening last week, which was, am I good enough? And so I thought we would kind of explore that topic because it's kind of one of those questions. And the universe has a certain way. Have you ever noticed that when you make a decision, that every once in a while kind of gives you a little nudge that says, yeah, that was a good decision? You know, it's right after Cynthia and I decided to delay our wedding. Everybody knows we delayed our wedding, right? We're delaying our wedding, so it's happening March 12th instead of a couple weeks from now, or 4 weeks from now, whatever it was. And so right after that, I had a car bill that came in for, it was supposed to be $200. It came in for $450. It was kind of the universe saying, you know, yeah, that was a good decision. Take a little extra time. So, and then we've had some complications with Oliver and stuff like that, and they've been saying, yes, get that all taken care of and stuff like that. So. When I was thinking about this talk, we had a large box come in from the bookstore into the office, and Sylvia comes up to me and she says, David, could you carry that box to the bookstore? It's really heavy, and, well, I'm just a girl, you know. I don't ever like that, well, I'm just a girl thing. It takes me back to some bad memories. But anyways, so I decided to do the proper ministerial thing when, you know, asked to help out like that. I went to my computer, I pulled up the Rolling Stones' I'll Never Be Your Beast of Burden, and maxed out my speakers and played it full blast, you know? And so we all had a good laugh, but then I realized I had forgotten that. I haven't listened to that song for a long time, I just remember the line. But I remembered that the whole chorus is, am I good enough? Am I strong enough? Am I rich enough? Am I, you know, various things we can't say from the ministerial platform enough? And you know, so, you know, here's Mick Jagger, you know, asking that question, am I good enough? And it's a core question we all ask, isn't it? It's a core question we all sit with, am I good enough? You know, at the first service I asked if there was anybody who had never asked that question, and Bob Rock stuck his hand up. You know, and for those of you who don't know Bob has trouble hearing, and afterwards he kind of came to me and sheepishly said, you know, not having good hearing sometimes is a problem, because I thought you asked the opposite of that question. So I thought he was just funning with me, but anyways, it was good. So the question, am I good enough? Am I good enough? First of all, whenever we step into new territory, whenever we step into something that we've never done, the question comes up for us, right? It's kind of an automatic question, am I good enough to do this? Am I good enough? And if we ask this question in a healthy way, in a neutral way, it's a very good grounding question. You know, I used the example in the first service that if Pete Carroll had called me up this morning and said, hey, David, what's his name? Russell Wilson. He was wearing his jersey yesterday. Russell Wilson is not feeling good. Would you come in and take over for him being quarterback for the Seahawks today? Okay? I might have to ask the question, am I good enough? And I might come back with the reply, Pete, I think you've been smoking too much of that legal weed up there. Because I have no qualifications for being quarterback of the Seahawks. None, zero. Okay? So it's a healthy question to ask yourself so you don't find yourself on a football field with a 350-pound lineman trying to kill you when you have no experience doing that, okay? So it's a good, healthy question at times. Years ago, I was involved with an event called the Seattle to Portland Bike Ride up in Seattle, the STP, which is a 200-mile ride for 10,000 riders. Happens over 1 and 2 days, where people ride their bikes from Seattle to Portland. And very fun event, great event. It's been going on for decades. And the first time I came to volunteer there, I stuck my hand up and said, I'm willing to be a volunteer and help with that if you need some help. And I figured I'd be doing something like stuffing envelopes or something minor like that. And they said, would you like to be in charge of registration? I went, in charge of? Like the director. Would you like to be the director of registration? I went, and they said, we'll give you support. We'll make sure that last year's registration coordinator will help you out, and we have an assistant for you, and but he just doesn't want to take on being the whole director. And so I thought about it, and I thought, I don't know how to do that, but I've got enough skill levels at a lot of things. So I've done a lot of volunteer work before that I could probably survive that. I could probably do okay. I could probably learn how to do that. Okay, and so I took it on. And it eventually led to where I became, down the road a few years later, the director of the entire event. And all the steps of the way, I'm sitting here going, am I good enough? And the answer kept coming back, yes, I am. And everybody else said, yes, you are. So I kept on doing it. It was a positive experience but I still asked the question, is this good for me to do? Is this the right thing for me to do? Taking on this center, being the minister of that, my previous church was about a 30 to 35 person church on a Sunday. It's a little smaller than here. Right? And so when Reverend Andrea asked me, she said, or kind of told me, because I was thinking of a smaller church, applying to a smaller church, and she goes, no, you need to think bigger than that. Think Reading. And Reverend Andrea, for those who don't know, is a previous minister here. And my first question to her was, do you think I'm ready for that? And she said, yes, because of this, and this. She said, she called out, she knew my history, and so she called it out and said, this is why I believe you're ready for this church. And so I said, okay, I will do that. Now, here's the thing about am I good enough? Am I good enough doesn't mean you already know how to do it. Because if you already knew how to do it, you wouldn't be asking the question, am I good enough? See, we don't think about, if you're going to go pick up a cup of water off of the table, you don't sit there and go, oh my God, am I good enough to pick up that cup of water? You don't do that because you've done it a million times before, right? Okay? But when you're taking on something new, when you're taking on something that's an expansion outside of your comfort zone, that's when you start to ask this question. And it can be a very healthy thing to do. It's a reality check that prevents us from stepping into something that's too big for us to handle, but also alerts us to being aware, being in a learning mode. Okay? When it's done from a neutral place, it's very helpful. Good enough doesn't mean we already know how to do it all. What it does mean is we know enough to survive while we learn something new. We know enough to survive while we're learning this new thing. So we're expanding from a base that's a healthy base, and we learn something new. So that's the healthy way of using, am I good enough? It was interesting just playing these congos for a moment. Brought me back to when I was in my early 30s. I took an aptitude test with an organization called Johnson O'Connor, one of the, at the time, and may still be, was premier aptitude testing firms. And I went to their San Francisco office and took tests with them. And I maxed out a whole lot of the aptitude tests. I was off the charts for one of them. I was the highest person they'd ever tested on one of the aptitudes, a completely useless aptitude. It's like basically how fast can you go through two columns of numbers and pick out the ones that are different from each other or the same. Okay, so I can balance my checkbook really fast. And the guy said, he said, if I didn't watch you do it, he says, I would have figured you had to cheat in some way or another because he says, nobody in our organization has ever done it that fast. So I was over 100th percentile. There was one aptitude that was my lowest, 33 percentile, meaning 66% of people are better than me. You know what it was? It was rhythm. Years later, I found myself at an event, and there's a famous, well-known New Thought musician named Jamie Lula, who is a good musician. And we were at the event, and I'd already been doing some drumming, and a guy named Nirvana Gale, who some of you may know, was the co-founder of Agape with Michael Beckwith. He was Michael Beckwith's boyhood friend. They grew up, they got in all sorts of trouble together, and eventually founded Agape. Nirvana took off and is still a religious science minister when Michael went the other direction. And so Nirvana and I are both at this event, and Jamie Lula looks at us and says, would you back me up on the next couple of songs with percussion? I'm sitting there, and it's like part of me in the back of my mind is going, I'm supposed to be really bad at rhythm. They told me I was really bad at rhythm. And here I am doing rhythm. And so all this, am I good enough? And for just a moment, I lost the beat for just a moment, and then I just, got myself back and said, the heck with that. I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm good at it. So, I brought it back. Lynn Fritz asked me to lead parts of the drum circle when I'm here with her and stuff like that. And so we can overcome that, am I good enough? Because the problem that we run into is when we constantly believe we're not good enough. When we're constantly sitting in that sense of, I don't believe I'm good enough. I know that none of you do that, but you've met people like that, right? Who that not good enough, and it holds us in place. We stay safe in our cocoon. We're scared to take on anything new because I don't want to have the experience of finding out that I'm not good enough, and I don't want to make any mistakes while I learn. I have to be able to always look good. Looking good is very important, okay? And I always have to be safe. Or the other thing that will happen is once in a while somebody will try something new and they will fail as a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because they have told themselves, and then they can go back and say, see, I told you I couldn't do that. I told you it wouldn't work. And they can tell themselves that, they can tell their friends that. When I was in college, my roommate decided to teach me to swim because they didn't know how to swim. And he and his couple of friends decided to throw me in Klamath Lake. I was going to Oregon Tech up the road here in Klamath Falls. And so this big Samoan kid picks me up. I weighed about 125 pounds at the time. I was a scrawny little thing. Picks me up, throws me over his shoulder, walks down and throws me in the lake. Now, I have a blackout. From the moment Fanoe Lutu was his name, picked me up and threw me over his shoulder to the time they came and got me off the bottom of the lake. I don't remember anything. What my roommate told me afterwards was I was yelling, I'm drowning, the minute he picked me up. Okay? I'm still on dry land. I'm over this guy's shoulder and I'm drowning in my mind, okay? And he said what it was they threw me in the water, my legs came together, I did like this with my hands and went straight to the bottom. And the next thing I remember, all this thing kind of got very pleasant and was very nice and very peaceful. And then I felt this bump, and the next thing I knew I had oxygen coming back into my lungs again, So, and they were doing resuscitation on me on the beach. And they didn't do that again. Not the resuscitation, they didn't throw me in the lake again. And so, it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I was already planning to drown, still on dry land. Okay? So we have this belief that we can't. I eventually took lessons, by the way, from a woman in Los Angeles who taught, how do I want to say this politically correctly, mentally challenged people to swim. I thought that is the perfect person to teach me how to swim. But if we get stuck with this idea, if we learn the belief that we're not good enough, we stay there and we stay there and we don't get out of our comfort zone and we don't grow and we don't expand and we don't express the life that we're here to give. We don't express the life that we're here to be. There's one of two ways we learn this. One is through repeated affirmation or confirmation. Okay? Somebody has repeatedly reminded us that we're not good enough. The other one is through major traumatic experience. We try something and it really doesn't work well at all, and we say we'll never do that again. I know some people, myself included, who, after my last marriage and my last divorce, it was so painful, I just said, you know what, I'm done with relationships. I'm going to live by myself for the rest of my life, okay? And that was I was good. And I was ready to do that, and then last October, Spirit and I were having a little conversation, and I finally said, okay, Spirit, I'm willing to try it. And about a week later, this woman walked in my door in my office, and well, you know how that goes. So we're not delaying the wedding because we don't love each other, but and so, you know, Cynthia walks in, but I was ready to call it quits. My younger sister had a 6-month marriage, after which she never did it again. You know, she's lived by herself for the whole rest of her life and stuff like that. And there are people who have a major emotional experience. They try what they really want to try. They try and become what they really want to do. They get burned and they withdraw and never try again with that "I'm not good enough" attitude. So we learn either through repetition or emotional involvement. And by the way, that's a great way to also remember how to heal anything. You learn through repetition and emotional involvement. So if you want to shift a behavior, you can either do it by repeating the direction you want to go or get emotionally involved with changing your behavior. Emotionally involved with shifting it, which means visualize it, get it to where you're really powerfully in alignment with it, in tune with it, called by it, to where you have emotion and feeling about it. So if you want to break a behavior, if you want to set up a new behavior pattern, that's also how you teach yourself. It's how you were taught in the first place. It's how that book of law, how you were taught in the first place was you were emotionally hooked by your parents, your school, your religion, things around you, your fellow classmates, your siblings, and taught. And so you can teach yourself a new way through repetition and emotional involvement. But we have a self-image about how good we are. We have a self-image. We have a picture frame around how good we are, and it's a different size for each area of our lives. So we've all met people who are very successful in business or money. I have a cousin like this. From the time he was in 7th or 8th grade, everything he touched, he made money at. You know, somebody gave him some goldfish, so he became a fish distributor. He got a toy train set. So what did he do? He started building train cars and selling them all across the country. Literally. This guy would make money at anything. You know, he's now a very successful photographer in Portland and has been for a long time. His love life, however, for a long time was terrible. Terrible. And so we have in different areas of our lives, you know, we have a different self-image of how we are. So some of us we're great at love, but we don't do well at, you know, business, or we don't do well at our creativity. I give all my energy to my love life. I give all my energy into that. Some of us are great at creativity, but not great at money. You know, the poor starving artist, right? You know, we've all heard that. Some people are great at spirituality. And spirituality carries with it, well, if you're spiritual, you'll be poor. Right? You've heard that? I mean, I know none of you believe that, but you've seen people, right? Well, I'm poor, but I'm happy. Okay? So we have a different image for each area of our lives. And if we exceed that self-image, if we start to get out of that self-image, we adjust ourselves back into the image. If we get too low, we'll bring ourselves back up. If we get too high, get too happy, we bring ourselves back down. We adjust ourselves to where we stay in place. Gay Hendricks in the book, The Big Leap, calls this our thermostat. We have a thermostat that has a comfort range of where we sit. You know, the very first talk I ever gave here, I remember I was talking to Michael back there in the sound booth, and he was the camera we used to have up there wouldn't follow very much. You know, so I was told, you know, you pretty much have to stand about here, you know, maybe over to here. You have a range from about the podium to about here. And so the first day I was here, I was talking about something, and I took it completely over to here, and then I walked it completely over to here to give an example of, you know, the expansion and how good we could have it. And the camera, you know, was supposed to stay there. Unfortunately, Michael was back in the sound booth. I watched him dive across the sound booth, grab the joystick, and try and follow me across with the camera. But that wasn't the point. But we have this idea of, this is where I live. This is what's comfortable to me. And this is where I'm going to stay. In order to break out of that, we have to shift our consciousness. We have to stop believing in these beliefs. And the problem is the beliefs seem real and true. The beliefs that we're believing seem real, and very true about us. And we have evidence, right? Well, I've done that before and it never worked out. I know somebody who tried that and it didn't work out. Okay, so I'm not going to do that. If we go back and look at people who did anything in life, most of them failed many, many times, often in the field they were in, before they ever did it, before they succeeded. Okay? Russell Wilson was actually, what was it, Luke? Was he a 6th-round pick? Or even further down. He wasn't much of a rated quarterback when he came out of college. Today he's considered one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Okay? Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team for not being good enough. Michael Jordan. So the beliefs can seem real and true. You know, Edison, of course, took thousands of times trying to make the light bulb and all sorts of things like that. The Wright brothers failed a ton of times before they ever flew the dang thing. So most of us carry a belief that we are fundamentally flawed. Most of us have a belief that says that there is something wrong with me that I can't see, so core. By the way, you all know what it is that's wrong with me, because you all can see it, but I can't, and it will undermine me every time. Has anybody ever met a person like that? I know, again, none of you, but you've met a person like that? Yeah. Okay? And so, remember to keep breathing. So most of us carry that core belief that there's something wrong with us and that we're not good enough. And we use it to hold ourselves back. The concept of original sin from the Christian church kind of exemplifies that. The people who created that particular creation story, the Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden story, had this understanding that there was this belief within us that there was something wrong, that we had done something wrong, and so they created a whole story around it to explain how did we get this belief. Not realizing that we got this belief because we convinced each other of it from childhood forward. Okay? You got convinced of it somewhere along the line, and you let yourself be convinced of it. The good news, by the way, is you can unconvince yourself of that. So that story, that idea of original sin, the truth is, we were never born in original sin. I love Matthew Fox's book, Original Blessing. That's what we were really born in. You know, we've got Oliver, our little 10-month-old, and he's not sitting there going, "Oh, I'm a lousy, miserable sinner. I need to live a life of pain and suffering because I was born this way." He's sitting there exploring and having a great time in life. Okay? Crawling around, learning new things. He discovered my sound system this week. He's still alive. All his fingers are intact. Cynthia sent me a photograph of him taking the DVD player, and apparently it has a little flap where the open thing is, and he can flip it open now. He's pulling himself up and standing up and grabbing everything. So that's his new thing this week. And remembering the truth of what he's trying to do, which is trying to just become more of a human being, we support him in being that, and you know, we don't do anything, you know, that would make him feel not good enough. When we forget that, however, we start to live that I'm not good enough. The real reason that we are here is to express the divine nature of who we are, but part of the dance of that we've taken on is we take on the dance of forgetting who I am so that I can remember who I am again. We're playing a game of hide and seek with ourselves. It's one of Oliver's favorite games. Put a little cushion in front of him or put your hand in front of him and say, "Where's Oliver?" Take it away. And he just laughs and he laughs, he loves it. "Where's Oliver?" "Ah!" You know, he's just, you know, and we're playing the same game. We're playing the same game. We all played hide and seek as a kid, right? I'm going to get lost. I don't want to be found, you know? And it's a game, and we're playing it in the universe. It's the universal dance. I'm going to forget that I'm actually God in form. And then I'm going to remember, because it's so much fun to remember. The problem is when we get stuck in the forgetting. You know, the Buddha said, "I am awake." When people asked him who he was, why he was so special, he didn't say, "Well, I'm this saint incarnated and I whatever." He said, "I'm awake. I'm just awake. I've awakened up from that dream. I've awakened up from the trance that I've been in." How we keep ourselves in that trance, how we keep ourselves from experiencing the real joy of life, there's a number of ways we do it. Number one is worry. We worry. And worry is the use of the beautiful imaging quality of our mind that we can use to create the life that we want, and turning it around to use it to create the life we don't want. And put those pictures in front of our mind over and over and over again. And pretty soon, we lose all the joy of life, because what are we looking at? The non-joy of life. All my checkbook, all my relationship, all my children, all my parents, all my, whatever, on and on. Worry is the number one way that we protect ourselves from being fully alive in who we are. Number two is blame, criticism, and gossip, which basically is I keep the finger pointed out there because it's so much more fun and safe than looking at the three that are pointed back here. Okay? And I don't take responsibility. The people in the intentions retreat right now, I gave them last time we did the retreat an assignment to work on, which was called Nothing and No One is Against Me. And it's the process of taking a look anytime we're upset at how am I engaged in that? How did I engage myself in this? How did I create this? Not necessarily, or how am I triggered by it, even if it's not that I created this. But what is it within me that's upset? And starting to deal with that rather than saying, that jerk. Even if the other person has been a jerk. It doesn't help to get caught up in their jerkness and respond in that way. You ever noticed? That's what I call matching energy. Somebody else is behaving really badly. My mom used to say, one jackass in the room at a time is enough. It's one of her old Pennsylvania Dutch sayings. And so we don't match energy. So a way to avoid that, to avoid our brilliance, is to play that game of matching energy. Another way is to get sick or get hurt. Ever notice somebody who has something happen really wonderful in their life, and the next thing you know is they're sick, or they get in an accident? I've had two friends recently buy brand new cars, and within 3 weeks crash the cars. Okay? Sometimes through their fault, sometimes not through their fault, but still, that happens. Another way is squabbling. Now, squabbling is different than a flat-out, really good, healthy, clear-the-air argument. It's just nya. It's majoring in minors. It's looking at the little details. Once in a big while, Cynthia and I are sitting there. We're having a wonderful evening, and one of us, usually me, will get into a tiff about some minor little thing. We had just had our Nourish Our Community event, a couple weeks ago, and I was putting stuff away, and I was pretty tired, and she was, lying down and taking a rest, and all of a sudden, I noticed that there were 2 egg cartons in the refrigerator. I was trying to find place in the refrigerator to put leftovers. There were 2 egg cartons in the refrigerator. Each one had 3 eggs in it. What is wrong with you that you didn't combine the egg? Who the heck really cared? But I had to go off on it for a while, And so we do that. We get into squabbling. Another way is to hide significant feelings. So when I do have a real significant feeling, I hide it. I don't tell myself about it, and I don't let anybody else know about it. Another one is not keeping agreements. We all seen or heard of people who get, again, some wonderful new job, wonderful new something or other, and all of a sudden, they're out of alignment with who they really are. They're caught, either coming in late to work, siphoning off money from the company, cheating on their spouse, doing, suddenly they're all out playing with the boys or the girls instead of being at home or whatever. We don't keep our agreements. We don't do what it is that we have said and authentically mean that we're going to do. And then the final one is we don't speak significant truths to relevant people. And so there are certain people who, throughout our lives, we have to speak the relevant truth to them, and we avoid doing that, and then we that's a little setup for bad stuff to happen. So those are some of the ways that we avoid our brilliance. Take a breath. So that's a bunch of good. Shake it out. Move it on out. You don't need to keep that. To move out of this, we remember the truth. We remember the truth of who we are. I am God in form. Say that with me. I am God in form. Let's say it again. I am God in form. See, the question is never, am I good enough? The question is, am I just being God enough, and am I willing to bring the God that I am enough into the situation and circumstance that I'm playing with? That's all it is. I'm always good enough. And so, as we start to remember this, we start to awaken out of the trance of self-delusion. We start to awaken from the trance we've been in, where we believe in our beliefs, and we believe in what looks like reality, and start to awaken to what our real reality is. As we awaken, we stop playing small. And we start to play in the fullness of who we are. Breathe that in for a moment. Get that into your body, the fullness of who you are. Feel that and what that starts to feel like in your body. Even if you have no idea how to express that, just to know what that is. We recognize that I'm a part of the universe expressing its highest good. I often like to say the universe is in a conspiracy for our good, right? It's not exactly true. The universe is in a conspiracy for its own good. Because if it wasn't, it would have self-destructed a long time ago, right? If it was against its own good, it would have self-destructed a long time ago, right? Make sense? Okay? We are part of the universe. We're expressions of the universe. So therefore, we just get to go along for the ride of good. You don't have to make it happen. You don't have to earn it happening. The universe is already in a conspiracy for its own good, and we're part of it. And that's how that works. It's not personal. The universe doesn't, in one way, care about you one iota, and on the other way, it cares about you immensely because you are it, and it is you. Get it? We good? All right. So we are part of that universe that is a conspiracy for its own good. We get to go along for the ride. That's the good news. As God in human form, I can learn and do anything. See, the truth is, I could learn how to be a quarterback for the Seattle Seahawks. If given enough time, given a body that would survive all the hits that I would take in the meantime, which I would need a new body at that point in time. But I could learn how to do it if I had to. We can learn anything. Now, here's the thing. Most of us want to learn what it is we're passionate about. Most of us want to learn what it is that our soul is deeply involved in. Most of us want to learn what gives us juice, right? And that's listening to the call of the soul. And when we start to listen to the call of the soul about what it really wants, it will take us past our fears, because our desire to express the gift of joy and aliveness, the gift of joy and love that we are here to give in this universe, will become bigger than the fear of, am I good enough? It will eradicate and erase the question, because I'm more involved in how can I share and give and be the gift of love and joy that I'm here to be on this planet, rather than, am I good enough? When we get into that passion, when we get into that joy, when we get into that Gay Hendricks calls it the zone of genius, when we get into that, our fears become irrelevant. They won't stop us. In neurolinguistic programming, we're taught to expand what it is that we want visually in our mind. Think of it as bigger, brighter, bolder, and take whatever we're afraid of or whatever we think the problem is and shrink it down into nothing. The problem is that most of us have our problems shrunk into big and our solutions shrunk into small. We're working in reverse. So if you will start to take, what is my passion? What is it that I would love to give? What is it that I'm really here for? And start to make that the big, bold thing in your mind. You may not yet know how to express that. That's fine. You'll learn. You have to be willing to go on the journey. You have to be willing to show up at the start line of your life. I had a bike ride one time that I was terrified of. It was the toughest bike ride in the region and one of the toughest in the country. And the last month before the ride, I was back and forth between whether I was going to do it or not going to do it. My training partner was going crazy because he couldn't figure out if he was going to be riding with me or not. And I finally remember reading a book from a guy, and he said, what you need to do basically was show up at the start line and start. Okay? And you'll figure it out on the way. You'll figure it out on the way. I am willing to awaken to my magnificence. Say that with me. I am willing to awaken to my magnificence. As we express this, I've got good news for you. It's okay to make mistakes along the way. Let me repeat that, because I don't think some of you heard that. It's okay to make mistakes along the way. Remember the talk about 3 weeks ago where I said make a mess? The first time you did watercolor, was it a beautiful masterpiece? No. Yeah, my art teacher laughed at my first watercolor in college. Okay? It's okay to make mistakes along the way. What we're willing to do is learn and grow as we go. And then we no longer have to worry about the concept and the question, am I good enough in that deep, wounded place? So this week what I'm going to invite you to do is three things, of course. Number one, ask, what would I love in my life? What would I love in my life? What is it that would give it juice? What is it that I'm really here to give as a gift? Number two, become aware of how I've held myself back in the past. Notice those behaviors. And as you know, that famous Bob Newhart skit from Saturday Night Live goes, stop it. Just stop it. Stop doing those behaviors and switch them. When I find myself in worry, what I do is say, wait a minute, what is it I really want in this situation? If I'm worried, if I'm looking at my checkbook, it's not, not good enough. And, what is it that I want to have in this situation? Okay, I want a checkbook that is good enough, okay? And so I start visualizing that. So when you catch yourself now, if you catch yourself gossiping, you stop yourself, or blaming, you stop yourself and say, wait, where am I in this? Because when I'm blaming, I'm giving power out there. When I'm taking responsibility and saying, how am I creating my own feelings in this, my own experience of this, I can shift myself. So we find out what we're doing and we stop it. And then finally, pick an area of your life and tell yourself the truth, the capital T truth, which is, I am God in human form. I am God in human form, until you have a breakthrough. And be willing to be playful, make mistakes, and have fun. Can you do that this week? Yes. Cool. Me too. So I want to close with not that. I want to close with this. Quote from Gay Hendricks from The Big Leap. Understanding why we've limited ourselves liberates a new energy in us, which we can draw on to propel us to new heights of abundance, love, and creativity. As we spiral upward in our quest to express our unique genius, we will likely soar past ghosts and shadows of those old barriers. For this reason, it's best to think of our quest as a continuing journey of transcending our limits. So in other words, we're not ever going to just arrive and one day it's all done. I'm sorry if you're waiting for the arrival date. It's probably not going to happen. We're going to keep on transcending. The payoff for the work is a gift of enduring value. We get to live in the full rainbow of our potential, in our zone of genius. In that exalted space, we enjoy the love, abundance, and success we create, and our very presence inspires people wherever we go in the world. I invite you to be one of those people who experiences the love, the success, the abundance in your life, and inspires people wherever you go. And the way to do that is to move past the question, am I good enough, once you've had a rational conversation about that, and let your dream be your driving force, your guiding force. Remembering who you are. I am God in form. Let's pray. So remembering that infinite wisdom, that infinite love, that infinite joy, that infinite creativity, that infinite power and beauty. That is all there is in the universe, abundantly, opulently present, constantly expressing itself in ever new and more wonderful ways. We remember that the truth is that we are one of that. And we live in a presence that indeed is in a conspiracy for our good, because it's in a conspiracy for its own good. And we get to enjoy that. We get to play in that field of good. We get to dance and laugh and love in that field of good. We get to awaken and remember from the forgetting of who we truly are. And so it is in this consciousness that I speak my word, that each and every person who hears this message wakes up in a greater degree than ever before, says yes to the true gift of love and joy that each of us is here to give. Knowing that our gift is unique, not judging it as good enough or not good enough, but ours is unique, and it takes all of the gifts, to create the beautiful symphony of life. And we are here to give that. We are here to receive the love and the joy of the gifts of others. We are here to give and receive and share and play. This is the truth of who we are. And so I speak my word that this is what becomes bigger in our minds than all this stuff. We set aside the appearances. We set aside all that wants to call us away from that, all that makes us want to forget that. We let it go. And we remember the truth, knowing that out of remembering that truth, we are empowered to be and create the changes that need to happen in this world. Wounded people do not create a healthy world. Healthy expressions of the divine create a healthy world. And so we create heaven as earth, earth as heaven. And so it is in this consciousness that I move into gratitude, knowing that as we awaken, our lives are transformed and this planet is transformed. And in that consciousness, we let it be so. We release this word into a law that knows exactly how to move it into form, expression, and experience in our lives on this planet right here, right now. And it does so. And so it is.
To love, serve.